So diving right in here. So things that we're going to cover. So I'm going to briefly talk about, why we should recycle, what happens to recycling in San Jose, and then how we can all recycle right. So the benefits of recycling. So, I'm sure we've all heard, recycling is really good for the environment. Recycling cuts down on a lot of waste. And a good statistic here is collectively in the United States, we recycle enough. The volume of materials is enough to fill two Levi stadiums full of material. So collectively in the United States, when we're all recycling, we're keeping a lot of material out of the landfill. Recycling also saves a ton of energy. So it takes 95% less energy to make an aluminum can out of recycled aluminum than out of the raw virgin materials. And then for glass, it takes significantly less energy to melt down and create a bottle out of recycled glass than it is to run the furnaces with new virgin glass. So what does all that energy conservation mean? It really translates into a lot of greenhouse gas emission savings, which is super important for fighting climate change. And I think all of us looking out at our windows today, I think we can really get behind that. Climate change is something that we really need to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm.
Recycling preserves natural resources. So, when we are recycling our cardboard boxes, paper, it's really preventing a lot of trees. When we're recycling glass or aluminum, that's preventing a lot of mining. So just to kind of put a little perspective on that, there's about 200 medium cardboard boxes you can get out of one tree. So just think of that. One tree is about 200 cardboard boxes. Sounds like a lot of cardboard boxes per tree, but just think of the city of San Jose. Got 1 million people. How many packages are just floating around, maybe just from Amazon? That really adds up on a daily scale of how many trees are just in circulation in cardboard boxes. So making sure that those get into the recycling, really important. One thing that's pretty overlooked is that recycling also creates a lot of jobs in the local economy. So think of it, when you're recycling, that's, you got the drivers that are picking up, it's going to the facilities. You have people in the facility sorting it, then it's getting shipped to different markets, some domestically, some internationally. So the more hands that are touching to reprocess that material and turn it into a new product, that's creating, more jobs than just, let's say, picking it up, dumping it in a hole. So in California alone, the recycling industry accounts for 85,000 jobs and produces $10 billion in products and services a year. And to put that in perspective, that's about the equivalent of the motion picture industry, which is, iconic in California. So recycling is big business. All these different benefits largely really add up to a big boost to public health. So you got less litter, less air pollution, less habitat loss, increased biodiversity, stronger economy. So these recycling just has really positive ripple effects throughout our communities and the environment. So what happens to recycling? So the first step into understanding what happens to recycling is just kind of get an understanding of who is picking it up. So in San Jose, there are 4 different companies who are picking up the different materials, so garbage, recycling, and then yard trimmings. So we have Green Team, Green Waste, Garden City Sanitation, and California Waste Solutions. So if anyone doesn't know who their hauler is, you can actually go to sanjoseca.gov/lookup, and you just type in your address, and I'll tell you who your collection company is. So if you have maybe some specific questions, or maybe like a bin that needs to be replaced, something like that, you can contact your hauler for that. So, but before, there's a lot of stuff that goes into recycling after the collection company. So to really understand the full recycling process, we kind of start from the very beginning. So Let's look at the case of an aluminum can. So when you buy that product, you purchase it, you take it home, you consume it, you place it in your recycling bin. And a lot of people think once it goes into your bin, you recycled it. But that's not really the case. Recycling is the whole process from the moment you buy it to the moment it gets turned into new material and somebody else buys it. That's what true recycling is. So after you place let's say the aluminum can in your bin, it goes to one of our materials recovery facilities, or what we call just MRFs. So at the MRF, it is sorted, processed, baled into different materials, or baled into big blocks by different commodity types. So for an aluminum can, that's just going to be baled into a huge block of other aluminum cans. And then it's going to be sold and shipped to buyers and manufacturers, sometimes domestically, sometimes internationally. Things like paper and cardboard, a lot of times that's sold to buyers domestically. Things like plastics, a lot of times that goes to international markets. So an aluminum can, that's probably just going to be bought by a manufacturer and made into another aluminum can. But something like, let's say, a plastic bottle, those usually get transformed into a new product. So plastic bottles typically will be kind of broken down into a different kind of polymer and made into something like polyester for clothing. So once it's, in case of an aluminum can, it'll be made into that final product and then back onto the store shelf. And for an aluminum can, that's actually one of the most highly recyclable materials there is. So an aluminum can actually make this loop in as little as 60 days. So from the moment you consume that, put it in your bin, it can make it back onto a store shelf in 60 days, which is pretty impressive. So this is just a really quick little video here, just kind of give some visualizations, better visualizations of the process I just described here. So we have our different recycled materials. You're putting those into your bin. You're obviously taking out your recycling. Truck comes, picks that up, and is going to be taking it to one of our materials recovery facilities where it's going to get dumped. And then it's going to what we call the headworks in the industry, pushed into the headworks of the facility where it's going to be taken in to the elaborate sorting process. So it's a lot of it's different conveyor belts, high-tech machinery that's pulling out the different paper, plastics, metals. We do have a lot of workers. These workers are actually primarily focused on contaminated items. So the items that don't belong in the recycling, they'll pull those off. And then the machinery usually sorts it and then gets it into these final bales for markets. So once it's baled, shipped, reprocessed, and then back on the store shelf. But what I just kind of described here is kind of the perfect situation. We do have a lot of challenges in the industry right now, and there's all sorts of different pressures that are determining how much is getting recycled and what is getting recycled. One of those pressures are some of the different laws and legislations at the state level. So those mandate things like how much we must be diverting away from the landfill. So that's really kind of going to dictate some of these materials and how much we're going to recycle in the end. We have the city zero waste goal. So we have a goal to be zero waste by 2022 in the city of San Diego. All materials away from the landfill. Everything put to your garbage recycling, yard trimmings. We want total volume not making it to the landfill. Another pressure is China's after that, but that was a policy set in 2018. China decided they're not going to take a lot of the world's recycling. They were recycling mills. A bill has to be 99% of what you are selling it. So that cardboard, there can only 0.5% of it can only be of a different material. So those are some really tight standards, which really threw a wrench in our recycling system that we're still trying to meet. Different stream is really changing. It seems as though over the last few years it's changing quicker and quicker and quicker. A lot of these facility designs, systems designed maybe a couple decades ago, and you can imagine a couple decades ago what you're putting into your recycling is very different than what it is now. Just for example, there's a lot of paper going into the recycling system, so this is newspaper, and then just people, a little bit more eco-conscious. They're not printing out as much paper more, so you're not getting as big of a volume of that. There's less glass containers, less metal containers like tin and aluminum, but what we do have is a lot of plastic. Plastic is replacing a lot of different things, so replacing a lot of those glass and metal containers. But we are seeing more corrugated cardboard, and that's largely due to the big boom in online shopping. So kind of a summary there, we have the stricter standards from China's national sword, we have little outlets for these materials, and then a lot of these different kinds of plastics that are making their way into the system now aren't really readily recyclable. So these are all kind of on our current recycling system, which kind of leads me to my next point is, since the industry is on under some pressure right now, it is really important that we are recycling right and recycling the right kinds of materials. So just to briefly go over, I know we all know this, but if we can get back to sort of these core materials that are recyclable, we're getting a lot of these random materials that don't belong into the system. But if we all just kind of remember these common materials that are recyclable, like metals and some of these different plastic containers. So metals, we got the tin and aluminum. We all know that those are recyclable. Just make sure that they're empty of liquids beforehand. Plastics, so when I say plastic containers, think of things like milk jugs, water bottles, yogurt tubs, things like that. The kind of the hard containers, we really want to recycle those. What we want to get away from is a lot of like the thin films, so plastic bags, snack wrappers, all those different things aren't easily or readily recyclable, so we can't really do anything with those. So keep those out of your recycling. And then just a reminder, and we get this question a lot, is that just because it has the recycling symbol on it and a number doesn't mean it's recyclable. So for example, number 6 plastic contains a lot of different kinds of forms. So styrofoam is a number 6, which is not recyclable. All other rigid forms of recyclable number 6 plastic are. A lot of people don't know that plastic bags are a number 2 plastic, which aren't recyclable. But number 2 plastics are also the same as milk. So you can see how this is kind of confusing. You think, oh, I see number 2 is recyclable, but that doesn't really mean anything. Paper and cardboard. So kind of the main thing here is that we want to make sure that it is clean and dry. So if you got some wet paper or if it's oil, the food renders it unrecyclable. So some clean, dry paper and recycling. And then a reminder that if you're recycling cardboard boxes, it's a big issue today with e-shopping that we get a lot of the cardboard boxes that are not flattened, but then also filled with things like styrofoam, the air pillows, all those different things which aren't recyclable. So make sure you pull those out, flatten your cardboard boxes, replacing them. And then shredded paper is also recyclable. Actually, you saw the video, we do have people pulling things off the line, so they're trained to pull things like that off the line first. So you can put shredded paper in recycling. It's in the plastic bag. And then we also always like to remind our residents which bin is for what. So if you have a single family home, your garbage will be black and then your recycling will be in the gray cart. If you live in a multifamily unit, your garbage will be the big green bin, your recycling will be the big white bin, and then you may also have some blue carts for recycling. Some tips. So it's very, very, very important that we keep our recyclables clean. So we want no food and no liquids, because not only when you place, let's say a takeout container that's still soiled with all sorts of food and grease, not only is that item not recyclable, because it'll contribute to our contamination rate. Remember, we have to stick to those standards of making sure that it's 99.5% clean. So that is not only recycled, but it also soils all the other items. So now we can have, if you have a recycling cart, putting one or two dirty food and liquid soiled items can render your whole cart unrecyclable. So remember, no food, no liquid. Some confusing items. I know I asked everyone to, if they have any confusing items, mention them, but just to mention a few, we have things like snack bags and items like garden hoses, which what we call in the industry tanglers. So garden hoses, wires, ropes, those tangle up in the recycling machinery and the conveyor belts, which can cause all sorts of damages and hazards to workers. So if anything that can tangle, keep those out. And then back to those snack bags. Increasingly, there's a lot of materials that are, what you would think are just plastic. So think of the plastic chip bag. When everyone, you open it up and there's a thin layer of a shiny material, looks like aluminum, which it actually is. But in the manufacturing process, it's bonded chemically. So you have aluminum on the inside and a plastic on the outside. So two different commodity types. And we can't separate those in the recycling process. So that is garbage. So keep those sort of things out. Plastic bags, saran wrap are kind of also like tanglers. They really get wound up in the gears of recycling machinery and cause all sorts of problems. So keep those out as well. And as I mentioned, the different food and liquid soiled. So kind of the poster child is the pizza box. So everyone, a lot of pizza, and you have the grease and the cheese in there, and then if you have a big pizza box, it almost feels wrong to throw that whole thing away. It's cardboard, but that's going to go through a facility. Machinery isn't going to be able to tell that it has grease on it. It's going to wind up in the bale at the end and cause issues for the marketability of that material. So with all these different kind of confusing items out there, we really are encouraging residents to visit our new recycling resource. We launched it last year, sanjoserecycles.org. And then a couple months ago, we've also launched a new feature where if you're a little more tech savvy, you can actually ask sanjoserecycles.org. So, if you're confused at the last minute whether the item goes in the recycling, I'm sure you're not going to want to go to your computer, fire it up, go to the website and search for it. So you can just pull your phone, say you have Apple, you can just ask Siri and you can say, what does sanjoserecycles.org say about, and then the item. So the garden hoses, for example. What does sanjoserecycles.org say about garden hoses? And then Siri will sometimes tell you, otherwise it'll give you the list of search results, and it usually should be right up at the top there, and they'll tell you exactly what to do. Just to show you how easy and intuitive this new resource is, got this quick video. So sanjoserecycles.org, and then right up at the top, you'll have a search bar. So in that search bar, you can type in individual items. We have over 300 in there right now, and we're always adding. So in this case, type in chip bag, and right up at the top, it'll tell you garbage cart. So that's a really good way if you're confused about what goes where. So that's all I have for my presentation, and look forward to answering some of your questions.
All right. So one of the questions is, how do we know that our garbage isn't landing in the ocean, which is what we see on KQED and other places?
Yeah, so the the recycling industry, this is a much larger issue than just San Jose. Uh, so as I mentioned, a lot of the different things like the plastics. We don't have a lot of domestic industries who buy and then repurpose, ultimately recycle that in the United States. So a lot of times we're sending our recycled plastics, failed plastics, to countries like China, and now increasingly different South Asian countries where there's a lot less environmental regulations. So from an environmental standpoint, I think that China's national sword is, well, now it kind of got passed down to a lot of other countries. But what was happening in China is, and a big reason why they didn't want to take a lot of our recyclables anymore, is that people were importing a lot of our recycled materials into China, and then it gets bought and it's kind of a secondary, and then there's kind of a black market, and then in the black market, the different processors were cracking open our big bales of recyclables, taking out some of the more valuable materials, and then illegally dumping the rest. And then, of course, that'll make its way back into the environment. And then we live in a very connected world. What's being dumped illegally in China or a different, South Asian country will make its way into the Pacific Ocean and make its way back to us eventually. So kind of a very complicated process, but it is kind of ironic that we would ship our materials all the way to across the world and then to have them just wash back up on our beach.
All right. So, you've got a question? Your hand is up. I'm going to allow you to speak. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I wrote it in the Q&A also, but I'll repeat it here. So we know that plastic, well, my concern is specifically addressed at plastic pollution. And so according to the US EPA, only 8.4% of plastic was recycled in 2017. And we're chasing a problem the wrong way. Why are millions of dollars of public money continually being poured into incrementally fixing a problem that has been pretty much a failure? Because the plastic industry generates the pollution, but they've evaded the responsibility for their pollution by peddling recycling as a cure. But we know, all the confusion about the numbers and the types of materials that plastic can come into makes it extremely hard to recycle. So why aren't we looking at something like the extended producer responsibility approach, which puts the burden of the pollution back to the polluters? And the European Union has done something like this. They've generated 3.1 billion euros paid by the producers of plastics packaging back into the EPR schemes. And the packaging recycling rate has improved tremendously since they've implemented EPR.
Okay. Thank you for that question and your comment.
Yeah, that's all very true and all very really good points. At San Jose, we've taken some initiatives. We had our foam food container ordinance, and then we had our plastic bag ban. So we've taken some incremental steps. And as I mentioned, this is all kind of a relatively new issue, let's say the last decade, with these increasing amounts of plastic. And a lot of what is being done in that arena isn't happening at the local level, which personally I believe that's what shouldn't happen. If you just have a bunch of municipalities kind of hodgepodging different ordinances, it really kind of becomes confusing, and for not only consumers, but industries. So the industries, let's just say Amazon, for example, if they have a different standard of what, let's say, Los Angeles is doing, San Jose is doing, what San Francisco is doing, it really kind of creates a headache for them. So a lot of this different legislation and actions be taken on at the state level. They have different sort of bills that they are looking into. Not so much, obviously, with the current administration, not much is happening at the federal level, but there is stuff going on at the state level as far as the plastics problem.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands up right now, but I did want to say that on my compostable trash bin, it does allow me to dump my pizza box in there. So I am throwing it in there, and I'm not throwing it into the trash bin because I'm assuming they can just crush it all up together and create compost for us.
Yes, so one thing that's actually really interesting, San Jose is very unique from other municipalities, particularly in the Bay Area. So yard trimming, should be solely for yard trimmings, leaves, sticks, twigs, what have you, that you're getting from your yard. But in San Jose, we looked into different kinds of ways how we can compost, and what was determined the best way and the least sort of burden on residents is that actually take all of the trash, residential trash. It goes down to a secondary facility between Morgan Hill and Gilroy. So all your trash is being dumped out, and it's kind of, I guess, the way you can visualize it, it's being tarped over, and then it's all being composted in place with all the stuff that's not going to compost. And then after however so long, there's going to be a big rake that comes through, pulls out all of the stuff that's not compostable, and then at the end you're left with some clean compost, which is then sold to one of the big buyers for it is Caltrans. So they use that compost to line all their different infrastructure projects. So even though we don't have a traditional green waste compost bin in San Jose, it's the trash that's being composted in the end.
Wow. Okay, we do have a question from Patty. So Patty, if you can unmute yourself, then you can ask the question.
Hi. I've been trying to educate myself, and so all of this information is just, if not new to me, it's of a great concern. And I wanted to know if there was a way that you were handling the education of just everybody in every neighborhood. I'm in the unincorporated East Foothills, and as I walk my dog the night before recycling, I know people, they're educated, they really want to do the right thing, but I see the wrong things in the blue bin, and I've been kidded by people who say that I'm obsessed, but I collect everything from my house the night before, and I separate it very carefully. And I have a lot of compost bins, so I have a community garden, so that's it's not hard for me to use all of that. But I know there are people who really want to be doing the right thing, and I remember a couple of years ago that there actually was a clear handout that came to, I'm guessing, every house. And I think I posted mine on the fridge because I'm continually checking on it. But I think it's been quite a long time, and I think people need to be educated. I was thinking of going on Nextdoor and just saying, hey, did you know that this, shouldn't be put in the recycle bin? But I just figured, what would be way more effective if there was the money to do it, to send out a real clear colored so that it's very simple, like you, in your presentation, you had it with graphics. And is that something that you could do again?
Yeah, so we actually, sounds like you have one of our recycling reference sheets that you've hung on
Yeah.
your fridge.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when the last time or when you got that sheet, because we actually updated them a couple months ago. So we actually redesigned those, and we are looking on ways to distribute those. So I know one of the things is that anytime we have a new an account sign up for services, they get one. We have them all over different websites, and then we are doing a digital campaign on how we could disseminate those. And then, yeah, we're just looking in different ways because those are really valuable to those reference sheets. Like you said, people can just hang them up on the fridge. It's a reminder of what goes where. And then, yeah, we're really encouraging people to visit our new website, sanjoserecycles.org, because there's only so much information you can put on one sheet of paper. It's a good reminder of the main things, but for a more comprehensive list, we have our new website.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it over? Can I say anything?
And then I see in the Q&A, there's one question about littering and illegal dumping. So yeah, we actually have an illegal dumping team. We call them RAPID. I forget the acronym they stand for something. But yeah, you can go to San Jose 311, and then there's a link in there for illegal dumping. I have the website up right now. Yep, right up at the, if you go to San Jose 311, you just Google that, and then there's an illegal dumping tab right there where you can report illegal dumping. And then our rapid team is really good. A lot of times residents will report it, and then within a day or two, we have the team out there picking up illegal dumping. And then we have a new project where there's a lot more illegal dumping hotspots. We've set up some cameras, and we've caught a lot of people in the act of illegal dumping, and we've issued something.
That's wonderful. I've got another question from Blanca. Let me unmute her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
yes, I have right now that you say about cameras. I live in Hermosilla Way by the golf course. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of this area. Yeah, I was thinking about cameras, but not only for people who dump things on the street illegally, but we have homeless. We've been having a lot of cars stolen, breaks, and like any other places. The difference now in here is that we have homeowners association, and we use also part of that money to put cameras, not only to see how people dump illegally things, but how people come and sell drugs in our streets, how we have homeless area, or how they stole our cars and breaking into the cars or going into the houses. So yeah, I hope we can think about a way that we can install cameras in this area. I know everywhere is the same thing. You know, we have all these crazy things going on all over, but since we have homeowners association and all those kind of things, and we pay some money, hopefully we have some kind of privilege to have a cameras on our streets, like I say, not only to see how people dump things on the street.
Yeah, and I mean, I just mentioned the San Jose 311. So you can report things like abandoned vehicles, illegal dumping, graffiti, all sorts of different things you can report. And then there's another category. So, if there's particular issues that you're noticing in your neighborhood, that's a great outlet to make sure that your concerns are being documented and heard by the city.
Thank you.